What's going on, guys? It's GBP baby. Welcome back to another video. I hope everybody's doing well, and let's dive straight into things. So we're going to be starting with the economic calendar as per usual. I use this mainly to see what news events are happening when, because this is when you'll find that most of the moves are happening. And what I mean by that is when we have a target and when I'm drawing our attention to certain levels on the charts, I'm expecting them to be reached at a certain time, and that's what these news announcements help me to understand. But as you can see, we have high impact news on dollar on the Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, with euro on Thursday and Wednesday, and then GBP on Monday and Tuesday. So it is looking like it's going to be a good week for, GBP and euro. And in terms of my expectations for the week, I am looking to see a down close week. So with these things in mind, that means that I'd like to think that we can see maybe a reversal on the back of Wednesday, considering how much high impact news there is, and then a continuation on Thursday. But we'll get into that as we talk about the actual charts themselves. So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. At least I know that Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday we can expect a lot of expansion and movement and actual, significant turns for the week, whereas Monday and Friday might be a little bit more quiet and we can expect more consolidated or retracement based movement. So I'm going to get rid of this for now, and we're going to start here. And on the weekly, as I said, I'm expecting a down close week. So that means I'd like to see the high ideally get created on Monday or Tuesday, and then the low be reached by Thursday, moving into Friday for the week. That's my ideal week, as in what I'd like to see. Now, you can see we had a huge down close week last week, so I am expecting a continuation of this. Obviously not to the same extent, but we're obviously moving into some kind of, imbalance. So we ran out these lows below here. We've also run out these lows below here. So these relative equal lows has been tagged, and then what I've been looking at is this range right here between this low and this high. And what you'll find is that we're starting to move towards the midpoint of the range, which is what we call equilibrium. This is classic for price. So if you look at the low to the high, this is our trading range, and we're just moving past that midpoint. So the next level I'll be looking to trade to is this 25% level, and then what I'm also paying attention to is the consolidation points. So this is a point on the way up. This is what we call a point of accumulation. This point will be a point of accumulation. And basically there's different stages of accumulations as price is making a move. This is all being explained by ICT, and on the monthly it kind of simplifies it down. And what I'm looking at is the down close candles within this move up, because this is a significant price point. So this down close candle, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the high of it, because I'm expecting price to continue to draw down towards that. And then when we drop down to the weekly, I'm looking around it to see what kind of PD arrays we have. And as you can see, we have again a consolidation, and then we also have one just above here as well. So I do like the look of these lows. I'm looking at these as relative equal lows. So let's get that delineated as a potential target. I'll mark this out as sell side liquidity. And we'll get that made a little bit thicker. And then what I'll do now is I'll drop down to the next time frame, as in looking at the daily, and ideally I'd like to think that we can find some kind of imbalance or something within this range. But overall, that's where I'm expecting price to start expanding to this week. And then the highest I'd want to see price trade would be, no higher than this consolidation point. So this is all a bullish order block. The fact that we've traded through the bullish order block should now make it act inversely. So that means that if we are to return back into the bullish order block, and we'll look at the last down close candle, drag that through, this should act as a bearish order block, because it's been completely disrespected. So what we can do is we can look at the 50% level, which is what we call mean threshold, and this will be the very highest I want to see price trade this week for me to remain comfortably bearish, for us to then expand lower. So we might find that we're trading higher Monday, Tuesday. That would be ideal, and then maybe get reversal on Wednesday or Thursday to then start expanding lower. So a few things to take into account. We don't have to reach the sell side liquidity this week. It won't be the end of the world if it doesn't. And we also don't have to only, price could literally spend the whole week just messing about in here, and then we don't see movement till the week after. So although I've had these marked out, these are just what I'm using as a guide, but I'm not saying whether it's not, obviously it's never guaranteed, but my point is it's not set in stone. So let's go to the daily, and you'll see we gapped lower, which is very interesting. I didn't even realize. Gap lower on the Friday, which shows very high level of bearishness. Price may want to try and fill that imbalance, but I find it unlikely, considering we're clearly in a rush to get somewhere, and I'd like to think that this gap can be left open, with the intent to try and trade lower quickly and get down towards the sell side liquidity. Now on the daily, you can see the sell side liquidity, which I marked out from the weekly, has some relative equal lows. This low, this low, and this low, and it becomes much more clear on this time frame. And this is significant because this is where liquidity resides. This is where there's going to be buy stops, essentially. basically ICT's concept suggests there'll be buy stops below here, and then obviously this will get sold to smart money. So I mean, sorry, sell stops. There'll be sell stops below there, and then this will get bought by smart money. That's ICT's idea. So yeah, my draw is still down below there. I'm happy for price to draw into that. We don't have a clear fair value gap, but we do have a slight imbalance in here, which is significant between here and here. There's a volume imbalance, so that might be something that price may want to play around with, but I'm not going to look too deep into that just yet. And then we'll go to the 4 hour and we'll take a close look at price. So you'll see the large expansion we had last week, and again there's that gap I was talking about. Ideally it gets left open. I like the fact that it's resting above this 50% level. Sorry, the fact that that's happening, you know, it makes it like almost signature in that price shouldn't need to get all the way up there. It can do it, but ideally I'd like to think it can be left untouched. If this gets traded through, however, so if we trade through this gap, then we might find that we're on the wrong side of the market. We need to consider going long instead, and then looking for this premium to be filled. And that would be off the back of it being a reversal happening. But I don't think we're done, because like I said, from the high time frames, it appears that this is where we want to see price trade. Another thing to take note of as well is that we have just taken out a very significant pool of liquidity below these lows over here. And what's beautiful about it is the fact that we've only traded through it once, right? So if we look at these lows, let me just make a level for you to refer to. Make it. Can you guys see that? Yeah, can't miss that. So the fact that price is traded through on the downside, when price takes out a significant pool of liquidity, it does this. I've drawn this diagram a million times. But it'll trade into it once, come out, it'll run it again, and then you'd get the reversal. So the fact that we've only traded through it once means that there's still potential, if we are going to reverse, that price will want to, you know, pull back inside the range and then drop out of it again. So that's what I'm waiting on. I think that if this is going to reverse, or if we're going to trade through this, you know, remember this is a strong level of liquidity. This is that yellow level I'm talking about. If we've just traded through that now, I wouldn't be surprised if we retraced into it and was to run it again, you know, the new pool. So this is what I'm open to happening. But like I said, if we bypass this, it might take a longer time, and this is very hard to judge because, like I said, it's time frame based, and because price is fractal, this return back into here might take a whole week. I just can't see that, or it might take a few days, or it could take a few hours. So that's what makes it difficult, but that's just something to consider. And then we will drop down to the 1 hour, but obviously I'll have better videos out tomorrow on lower time frames. But generally speaking, it's all the same in that I'm looking at this gap and I want to see how price acts around it. But overall, my draw is still suggestively below here. So that's everything on dollar. Hope that all makes sense. Let's head on to GBP USD, and we'll start here on the monthly as well. Now this month is going very crazy, very interesting. Obviously, if we're expecting low prices on dollar, that means we can anticipate high prices on euro, and if we can look, pound, sorry, high prices on pound. And then we've just reached the 50% level, which is mean threshold of this bearish order block, which is likely why we got this strong reaction away. But obviously, if we want to see price continue to trade, where would be the next PD array? And that's where this rejection block level comes in. Now, I barely use rejection block levels as a draw just because they're very complicated and I don't really understand them myself completely. But this is where I'd be expecting price to reach. More so this, I'd see this as buy side liquidity basically, because I don't want to confuse us with that range. So let's get rid of this, make that thicker, and then we can drop down to the weekly. And you can see quite the messy week we've had. But what's interesting is that we came down, filled this fair value gap and left it straight away, closing comfortably above it, closed in this imbalance, and it looks like price is going to continue to trade up into the premium. So I do like the way that price is, closed higher like this. It's looking very robust, so to speak. And then I'm looking first, obviously, for us to trade into this weekly fair value gap. And I have spoke about this last week, I believe. But I'd be looking for price to start pushing through this. I want to see it trade to it and potentially through it. But obviously first, I'm looking to fill that fair value gap in the premium. And then in terms of the lowest, I'd want to see price trade this week. Well, we have this consolidation, but we also have this large wick. Now, when we have significantly large wicks like this, we can generally split them up into quarters and, divide it accordingly. And I'm going to be looking at this 25% level, because any lower than that, I will be a little bit suspicious, because ideally price shouldn't need to go any lower than that. If it does, whole different story. But my point is, I'm looking at this as a level of support as being the lowest I'd want to see this wick. If we're going to be bullish, this is the lowest I'd want to see this wick trade, for us to then trade on higher. So let's go down to the daily, take a closer look. and there's not really much to go off here. We have an inversion fair value gap, but again, I don't really want to see price even get down there. So let's go to the 4 hour. And do we see a PDRA? We have a rejection block level around here, and we also have these lows. So as we drop down to the low time frames, we're starting to see, this is a point of consolidation or accumulation. So there's reason that price may want to dip down there, maybe take out sell stops, trade into this bullish order block. So I'll be paying attention to this level moving into the new day to ideally create the low of the week, assuming we do want to trade that lower. And that would be in line with watching dollar trade up into our premium, which I've already delineated. So that's going to be everything on GBP. I hope that'll make sense. But beautiful delivery last week above these relative equal highs. We grabbed those buy stops quite nicely. And again, look at how price is stabbing through it once, twice, kind of left it. But I think we are going to be messing around a bit with potential to keep pushing and taking out these highs. But it's interesting that whilst dollar's heavily taking out these lows, pound still hasn't taken out these highs. So we might find that pound does need to catch up. Especially with the way that euro's moving, we might find that pound needs to catch up. And as we know, pound does have some high impact news this week, so we can use that to our advantage in that we may be using that as sentiment to push price into those levels. So yeah, make sure to turn on post notification, guys, if you don't want to be missing the videos this week. I am definitely looking forward. I will be trading this week for sure, so do join the Discord. And let's head on to Euro USD. And we're going to start on the monthly here. This is my first time looking at Euro today. And some beautiful relative equal highs that we haven't taken out yet. So I'd be wanting to see these get traded through next week with the expectation to trade up towards this breaker level. Looking at these highs mainly. There is an implied fair value gap up here, but I don't want to speak too much on that. But it'd be nice to see if price can potentially reach up into that. And let's see what we have on the weekly. And again, not really much to go off, but we can look at this last point of consolidation, and price should be able to use that for support, if anything. So, and I'll just notice this as well. Let me just draw this out. So we have a interesting gap here. Let's just make this. And you can see our price is now closed above that on the weekly. So if price taps back into this gap, which is technically, I'm treating it as a fair value gap, right? A bullish one. Why? Because we traded and closed above it. So if we split it up, 50% consequent encroachment should be the very lowest we see price trade, but even the open of the gap should still remain significant. So that's just something to take into account. We'll drop this like so. And then let's go to the daily. And again, not really much, but I do like the 50% level being at that point of consolidation. But overall, if we're going to create the low, I'm happy to see it be created within this range. Ideally above the 50% level, purely because of that gap. Where is this gap? Okay, we can't see the gap on the 4 hour here. But what we can look at is look at how price respects it here. Trade right to the top of it. And then we left it. Use it as resistance, continue lower. What happened the next time? Tapped it here. You can't make that stuff up, guys. Look at that. And left it. So this is obviously a significant price level for smart money. And then here, 50% level, bumping it. 50% level. And then eventually now, as of recently, we've completely tapped it and then traded through it. So it should act as bullish. As in, if we tap it down into it again, we should be able to look for buys from the same point to send us higher in towards our liquidity pool above here. And remember that implied fair value gap up here. So yeah, that's going to be everything, guys. I hope that all makes sense. That's going to be everything for today's video. Definitely tune in tomorrow. I'm going to be very interested to see how Monday trades this week. But like I said, I don't think I'm going to be trading until Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. But yeah, it should be a good week. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to drop a like, drop a comment, join the mailing list, smash subscribe, join the Discord, turn on post notifications, and I'll catch you tomorrow. Peace.